And the intro music gets me every time. I'm just kind of sitting there
I
breathing out,
know,
and all of a sudden explosion.
always vibing. Hey everyone.
Well, thanks for joining us today. It's kicking off 2025 with the first live stream.
Let's see.
So this
And
one should be pretty cool, I think. We kind of stumbled into this topic. I forget what actually got us started down the path, but then we started playing with it, and they just became a big rabbit hole for us for a bit. We're talking about PowerShell Web Access today, everybody. So let's do a we're going to give you like a quick little dive in. We'll talk about kind of how it came along, what the purpose of it was, and then how we've been seeing it used in the wild and reported. And then we'll do a quick little dive in, like we always do, showing you some of the detections piece, all of that fun stuff. Um, but I mean, this has been around for a while, right, Tyler? I mean, this came out, I want to say they released it officially with Server 2012. So it's not like PowerShell Web Access is a new feature or anything. It's been around for a minute.
yeah, for sure. I say I think when we were looking it up, that's been around for just over 10 years or so. So for those that don't know, we're gonna demo it here in a second. But if you don't know, PowerShell Web Access is a web-based PowerShell console that runs on a Windows IIS server. So it's designed to allow IT admins, or I guess anybody that's able to log into it, but it's designed to allow out admins to run PowerShell commands from the web console to remote machines. And kind of the point behind it was so admins could run it from anywhere. You know, if you have a Mac or a Linux box or even your cell phone, as long as you had the ability to get to this web page from anywhere, anywhere that you're allowed or able to access it from, you're able to run PowerShell commands inside of the environment.
And it's really interesting too, because it is indeed a feature, not a bug. It's meant to be accessible, like most things Microsoft puts out there. They think about accessibility over everything. And
And
as
as soon
a,
as, oh, again,
I was going to say, as an administrator, it is a great resource. Like, I wish it was something we would have utilized more when we were managing our own kits and stuff, instead of having to access everything individually. It's really interesting.
yeah, for sure. I was going to say, you would hit on how Windows is making it accessible, and just like everything else that they make accessible, as soon as it becomes accessible or easier for an IT or an administrator to run something or perform something, shortly after that, we see some kind of adversarial use of this thing that's supposed to be used for, benign administrative normal uses, right?
Mm. Well,
So it,
what's interesting too is we found a bunch of stuff in this, kind of started playing with it in the lab, and then looking back, we kind of backpedal and realized that some of the threats we've been talking about recently have actually been reported utilizing this as their C2 mechanism, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so we had a few weeks ago, we released an IOC on some Iranian threat actors. They're called, excuse me, Pioneer Kitten, Fox Kitten, Lemon Sandstorm, all kind of fun names, but they're all Iranian threat actors. And we found some reporting. I think Trey just dropped it in the channel there in the chat, but found some reporting of them going in, installing PowerShell Web Access on their victim box. So installing IIS, which is a web server, installing the web server, and then installing PSWA, PowerShell Web Access, on top of that to then allow them to utilize PSWA as a C2 and use it to laterally move inside the network, execute commands inside of the network, and do it using a native process that is going to look a little more normal than some of the other threats that we've seen execute the last couple of weeks. And we'll get to demoing that here in a second.
Yeah, and yeah, if you guys didn't catch it, I did drop two links into the chat window. The first one is the initial reporting from CISA. No, and this isn't old stuff either. This reporting is showing them using these kind of behaviors as recent as August of 24. So it's only been a few months since this was spotted in the wild from a recent report. And then Splunk actually followed it up in October and did a whole blog post about PowerShell Web Access. I know Tyler is a huge fan of the Splunk blog, and for you guys watching, if you haven't checked it out yet, you really should. There's some awesome content there.
Yeah, shout out to them. I mean, the blog that they wrote up is great. It's got a great way for you to stand it up in your own lab. There is an atomic red team test that's already out for it. We'll be making an excuse me, we'll be making a threat on this this upcoming month or so. So we'll also have one out. But yeah, it's definitely very interesting to read, very interesting to check out. But with that, I think we're probably good to jump in and demo and just show a little bit of what it looks like and kind of see what it looks like in the logs.
Yeah, let's let the people see what they want to see.
All right.
So
So I'll switch over
access is
here.
super easy. You can see Tyler now. He's got a browser pulled up, and it's already set to log into the web access console. It's
Yes.
literally that easy once it's installed, and the
Yes.
installation itself is trivial, right? It's like 3 commands.
Yeah, there's like two commands to get it, or two or three commands to get it started. You install IIS, and then you use the install Windows feature, um, Windows PowerShell Web Access, and then you have a third part of it, which is where you allow specific users from specific places to access it. But I think like if there's any IT admins on here, I think it's safe to say it's very easy when you go to start allowing users or you're trying to traverse inside of your environment to just do that users star computers star and you're able to access it from anywhere. I know even using like traditional PS remoting, you have to also allow specific users and specific machines or IP addresses to be able to communicate to them. There has hardly been an environment that I've gone to perform threat hunting or incident response on where that computer name isn't just an asterisk to allow everybody to access everything from anywhere if you have the correct credentials. I would think it's probably pretty safe to say that in most environments, the setup for this is probably the same. But with that, yeah, once you have it installed, it's just whatever the whatever IIS server you have it installed on /PSWA. If you type in PWSA, it won't work. That was probably a 2 hour issue that I had put on myself when we first installed it of trying to access it, and I thought I broke it, but I was just typing it in like a goober. But so we'll go in. This is a page. We're going to use our unicorn creds here, and then just go ahead and sign in, going over to .20. And then once you do that, it'll connect to that machine with those credentials that you have. And then from in there, you're in a PowerShell console on the web without having to launch actual PowerShell.exe. And yeah, you can go in, you can run whatever commands that you want to run. The output is right there. It's a little slower than traditional PowerShell, but still go in and run the command, see the output right there. You can laterally move, you can create additional PS sessions to laterally move across your environment to different machines. You can use it just like typical PowerShell.
Yeah, from an adversarial perspective, it acts as a perfect jump point because it doesn't show up the same. It's not something people are directly hunting for, or may even realize is there.
No,
And
well,
it's
so
even stealthier if you land on, say, you land on a functioning public-facing IIS server, install this. It's you haven't really done much to change the landscape unless someone's looking for it. You've got ingress and egress in an easy manner.
yeah, if you're in the way that I see it being like the best way I can see an adversary utilizing this is if they are able to land on a web server or a server inside a DMZ that also has some kind of trusted access into the environment. You land on that, you install the PSWA on top of the server, and then from in there, if it has that inherent trust or at least a partial trust to be able to go in and communicate to the internal network, it's a perfect point to kind of stage your C2. You could reach this site from anywhere in the world, or you could, if you have, if you have sufficient permissions on the box itself, and you're even on an internal box, you could open that box up to the world, change some firewall rules, and then you kind of just give out the URL to your, to your buddies on your team. Say, go to this URL, sign in with these creds that we scraped, and you're able to access the network in a seemingly normal way, at least according to the logs. And then speaking of the logs, we'll kind of switch over. So you saw I just ran some just kind of normal commands, just some living off the land commands. I ran some more earlier, but if we go over to Splunk, we'll just search for netstat because that's the command that I just ran just to kind of see where we're at and what we're able to view. So similar to how we do the other ones or the other threats or other detections that we do on Threat Thursdays, I want to know the parent image, I want to know the image, and I want to know the command line values that are ran. So just doing a keyword search on netstat and pulling out those field values that I was talking about, we can see that we have a parent image of WSM Provost. This is we have the parent image of this Vice PowerShell, and the reason for that.
And as we're saying, this caused you a bit of a headache for a minute, right? This is kind
Yes.
of it started a whole nother rabbit hole.
this is why this is why I was keyword searching for netstat instead of just looking for commands run by PowerShell, because that's how I thought it was going to look. I had my, if you've been on any of our other Threat Thursdays, I plugged in the suspicious PowerShell execution where the parent image is not inside of system32 or not inside of program files, and the image is PowerShell. And I thought for sure that that would work, right? I thought the parent image would maybe be some kind of IIS image or executable or something. I don't know. I thought it would be something different that would be a little harder, or a little easier to see. So I was surprised that the WSM propost.exe was the parent image, and then I did some more looking into it. That is the parent image that essentially is utilized for all remote PowerShell sessions. So like PS sessions, PSWA, things like that. Any kind of remote PowerShell utilizes this as the parent image. So one of the first things that kind of stuck out to me with that is kind of in some of my own detections where I'm only looking for PowerShell.exe or CMD.exe as the image or the parent image. If I stuck to those, just kind of blindly ran those without looking more into it, I would have totally missed this. And as a threat hunter, if if I was threat hunting on a network and adversary was doing this and I was using the old detections that I had, because the images and parent images are different or not what I expected, I wouldn't have been able to see this at all. It would have totally gone by the wayside. Maybe I would have seen it with like one of the living off the land discovery Sigma rules that we have or detections that we had. It would have pulled up netstat, but overall, it doesn't. Nothing in this really is like jumping out to you as being super malicious or abnormal, right? And then going from that, kind of expanding it outside of just the netstat out of this keyword search, because we were looking for that again because we know the commands that we ran. If I change the parent image to this WSM propost and then look at what commands and what images are spawned underneath it, it's still not super, it doesn't stick out in a super crazy way that I expected it was going to. So we see the parent image here is that it's loading the WSM parent image, which is inside of System32. It's a native Windows utility. It's not in downloads. It's not in temp or program files or anything. It's not in any weird spots. Which that parent image, which is native, is then loading another image, which is again inside of System32, a completely native Windows utility living off the land completely up to this point, which is then just running some commands, which these commands might seem a little obvious because I have one called evil.ps1. I'm starting Notepad. Like adversaries aren't going to do those type of things. They might run an executable or something like that, but it really blends in a lot more than I think how we see the traditional threats that we have put out and that we've talked about in the last couple of weeks. And like an example of that is like typically when we deploy these threats and we show these detections, our parent image will be either our scythe implant or some piece of malware or a script or something like that that one should stick out because it's in a suspicious location, right? It's inside of temp, it's inside of downloads, it's inside of public, some universally writable file location. When you have one that's just System32 on System32 running some strange commands, it can be very difficult to kind of spot that anomalous behavior. And to kind of show that, I had this other query where I went in and just did a values of the command line by parent image, and I didn't exclude anything else. I didn't specify anything else. Just if you're looking at all of your logs, trying to find the bad guy in maybe a like a free for all hunt, right? You're just kind of looking to see what's going on. If you scroll by, go to the next page. This is where it is, and you're scrolling by. This stuff doesn't really look any more suspicious than anything else on here. Anything, I would say, I was talking to Trey beforehand, this SVC host with this task host, I think this looks more suspicious than some of these commands that are being ran down here. So the
Yeah,
long-winded way of
100%.
why I was saying all that, it's like if you are able to start your campaign or your parent executable from something that I'll call trusted from I think of System32 as the parent image as like a trusted place where things should start, right? A normal place where things should start. Um, it's yeah, if you look at it from kind of a trusted place, having your parent image running out of System32, I think is a big leg up as far as blending in and defense evasion.
Yeah, not coming from a user's desktop or temp or
You know,
something like that. That that point of the parent image being kind of just blending in there, especially when you have like that SVC host and task host stuff you scrolled by. Yeah,
mhm.
that stuff would have sent us on rabbit holes a little while back comparatively.
Yeah,
Like
oh
this,
yeah,
it blends really well, and from the threat perspective, this is kind of thing like I think is a huge leg up because it does allow you to kind of hide better, and there's not a ton of extra really configuration or work, and there's still the full accessibility and capability that PowerShell provides.
yeah, for sure. I say it's if you were able to, as an adversary, have have host-based access to a machine with sufficient permissions to basically make this PWSA or PSWA. See, I did it again. To make the PSWA globally reachable or reachable by your team, by your threat actor group, you could do anything and blend in, I think, better than most any other way we've seen people do it, and not have to do some fancy way where you exist only in memory. In chat. But you're on mute, Trey.
Of course I am. It has to happen at least once every stream, right?
Always in one.
I had a few questions in chat there. First one being any good ways you could think of to restrict PowerShell running certain actions. So I'm assuming they're asking, is there some way that you could restrict the PowerShell's access or how this is loading?
So I know that PowerShell has a constrained PowerShell mode, which limits to different things that you're able to run on it. I'm not sure if there's a way to restrict certain actions of it. I think the best way is to restrict what users you are able to be remotely accessed via PowerShell, and users and machines. So typically, how we would recommend it is if you are going to do PowerShell remoting, well, how I would recommend it is don't do your administration through GPOs or through I can't think of any of the is it Big Fix? I can't think of the other administration tool, but Windows has an administration server that you're able to run the rest of your environment on. I can't think of what it's called right now, but yeah, the first thing I would recommend is do not use PS remoting unless you absolutely have to. There's other means to utilize to administer your environment. The best way probably GPOs. That way everything is the same. But with that being said, using PS remoting is super helpful, super useful, a very quick way to do it. I would recommend that you just limit what machines are able to access to, or have a single jump host or jump box that then is the only one that can reach out to these other users, and then just maybe have canary tokens on that jump box, or very very heavily monitor that jump box for external connections, and go from there that way. That's why I would do it. But I'm not sure if there's a way to limit what PowerShell commands can be run outside of a constrained PowerShell.
So it is something I think we want to dig into more, especially with PSWA. I would assume that if you've set up some kind of constrained language mode or you've set up a configuration profile for certain users to say limit the commands they can run or certain functions like that,
Hmm.
since you're authenticating with PSWA and it's utilizing PS remoting, it should load that user's profile into this instance. And that could potentially affect what they are able to do
Yeah.
from it. But that's, again, we haven't verified that. And that's something we'll probably dig into a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I say, and then I see another one on here of any recommendations for Splunk certifications or to get a better understanding or practice with threat hunting. Yeah, Trey hit it right on there for the boss of the SOC. Boss of the SOC is awesome. It's free. That's put on by Splunk. They used to have it open year round. So the previous versions, they would have open year round, and they used to host it on GitHub also. So you could download it and host it on your own. Splunk also has free courses on there if you do education.splunk.com, and they also have one. It's a Splunk for rookies that is on there. Supposed to take you, zero to hero on utilizing Splunk. And I know that Elastic, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Elastic, I know that Elastic has similar workshops and things like that that they provide. And I think a lot of them, at least the beginner ones, are free or a reduced cost.
Yep, and you can't forget about the best one out there too. We also provide a hunting through the seam workshop that we've got it planned to run again here later on this year. So if that's
Yep.
something you're interested in, go ahead and check out the Scythe.io events page and sign up for said workshop. That
Yeah,
one's
for sure.
always fun. We've got a cool environment set up for you. You get a chance to play with Splunk in a controlled manner and hunt to your heart's desire.
Yep, for sure. And then now we are pretty much just at time, but I did want to show one other thing just on the topic of PS remoting. Um, so PS remoting in and of itself has some things that you need to look out for. So the main one I want to talk about. So to do a traditional PS remoting, you would store your creds. Cred equals get tag credential, and then you'd put Unicorn Labs, Unicorn password in there. You'd have it stored like that, and then you would create a PS session, and then from that you would enter your PS session, and then that's how you would go in and administer and do all the things that would basically provide you the same functionality of what we have in the PSWA over here. The big difference is your credentials that you put inside of this cred variable are still stored there in plain text. So if I scroll up to this command, so I'm going to get the variable that has this management automation PS credential in there. So that way I don't care what your credential is called from an adversarial perspective. I'm just looking for this PS credential inside of any of your variables. And then for each of those, I'm going to pull out the username and password. So when I run that here, you can see that the cred variable I just set, my username is Unicorn Labs, and my password is Unicorn. And that's written in plain text, stored right there in the variable. So PS remoting via command line, you can see right here, there it is. It's stored right there in plain text, whereas when you are inside of PSWA, it's stored inside of a database that I'm sure is salted hashed inside of the database, and you're not able to just pull down that username and password in clear text. So definitely one plus up for it to utilizing PSWA vice normal PS remoting, but there's still obviously some precautions that you need to take over there. Can PowerShell Web Access activity be overlooked? Yeah, Jeffrey, I would say 100%. I think I've been doing threat hunting and instant response for pretty much 10 years now, in different environments that I'm not normally in. And if we were just scrolling through thousands of logs or millions of log entries, even using stats or some kind of grouping, it looks like normal behavior. It looks like normal things that typical admins would do. I think that the best way to identify it, you would need to be ingesting both those process logs, those event logs of processes being created, just like we had here in Splunk, right? We need to have this visibility, but we also need to be ingesting the IIS logs and who is accessing them and when, and then utilizing both pieces of that, both pieces of that data, combine them to see, you have what time, what IP address they're connecting from, what user is authenticating, and then what commands are being ran. I think you would need all four of those things to really piece together what's happening. Is just the view that we have here of the commands being run. A lot of these, like I said, they're not super suspicious. They're not super crazy. It's supposed to be used as an administration tool, and looks, other than me, doing some things that obviously aren't admin. But if I were to space these out over a large piece of time, I think you would just go right by it. I think that I would just go right by it, right? So definitely something to be aware of. I would encourage you guys to check these out in your own logs, and maybe you have some interesting stuff that you can send back to us and let us know. But yeah, definitely something, another threat vector, another image to be weary of and just to monitor, right?
Yeah, this one was really fun to dig into, really fun to research, and we're definitely going to play with it more, you guys. So if you're a Scythe customer, I would say look out for at a minimum, a new IOC on this. Best case scenario, we might put out a really cool threat based on it, depending on what we can automate and make for you guys. But yeah, I'd say keep a lookout for that. Like always, we say we want to stick to 20 minutes. We made it just over 25.
I think we should just up it to 30. I don't think we've been under 20 minutes one time. I think
No,
mostly because
not once.
I can't stop talking about the detections. Yeah, but
Yeah, it's a really interesting piece. But with that, guys, I think we will catch you on the next stream. For any of my folks in here that are in DC or that are going to ShmooCon this weekend, come find me. I'll be out there with some more of the site crew and a bunch of other people. So look forward to seeing everybody.
yeah, sure. Thanks everybody. See you next time.